Where the heck do I even begin? New year, new plan, same disaster. Welcome to the New York Jets. Let's roll the tape.
We can analyze where all this went wrong. We can start pointing fingers of blame, but the truth is, when something is as catastrophic as this has been, everyone deserves the blame. So what I'm about to say applies from the very top of the organization, which is the owner, all the way down to the 53rd man on the roster and every person on the coaching staff and everyone else involved in football operations. What you're going to have to wear for the rest of your lives is that the 2024 New York Jets are one of the greatest failures in sports history.
I mean, the dude couldn't play dead in the horror movie. I mean, how many times, how many scenes did you need to see? I mean, I've seen all of the Friday 13th. I've seen all the Nightmare on Elm Street.
Freddy Krueger.
I saw.
Can't play dead in a horror movie. That's a beautiful line.
And here's the most Jet thing of all. Has there ever been an instance of a team being 1-15 and not getting the first overall pick? Have the Jets set up themselves to set the most mind-blowing thing for all of us Jets fans to have to swallow?
If you've been a Jets fan for any amount of time, you already know this feeling, that pit in your stomach when hope turns into absolute chaos. We've seen it all before. The new era, the fresh start. This time it's different, a new culture change, but it never is.
That's the fewest pass yards in Jets history. That's the fewest allowed by a team since 1998. So it's been 27 years since somebody has had a worse passing line than what Justin Fields had today. They sacked him 9 times for minus 55 yards. They had 82 yards. Chad, in an NFL game, a team had 82 yards of total offense in a 60-minute NFL game.
For 15 years, this team has promised a new beginning, a new GM, a new coach, a new quarterback, and every single time it ends the same way. Panic, power struggles, a roster built on hope instead of answers. Right now, the crisis isn't brewing. It's here. The locker room's exhausted, the fan base is numb, and the entire blueprint, well, it's totally on fire. So today, I'm breaking it all down for you folks. This is the autopsy of every wrong decision the New York Jets have made since 2020, and why, no matter who's in charge, they just can't escape their own damn cycle. The man who's responsible for many of the decisions in 2020 and beyond is Joe Douglas. He entered the situation in 2019, and in true New York Jets fashion, he did so under the most unusual of circumstances. The man he was replacing was Mike Maccagnan, who by 2019 had watched his Jets suffer 3 losing seasons on the bounce, all of which resulted in last place finishes in the AFC East. That, combined with a 14-34 record over his tenure, meant that there were no surprises to see him fired, except it wasn't that simple. You see, over the 2019 offseason, the New York Jets were busy. They hired head coach Adam Gase, fresh off a mediocre 23-25 tenure in Miami, and on top of that, they spent over $120 million in free agency, including spending big money on players like Le'Veon Bell and CJ Mosley. Then, as always happens at the end of April, the NFL draft took place. And who was responsible for deciding who to use those valuable draft picks on? None other than Mike Maccagnan. Every dollar he spent and draft pick he used was done with a plan in mind. But all of that went out the window when the New York Jets decided to fire Mike Maccagnan on May 15th, just a few weeks after the draft had concluded. Again, firing a general manager with his record absolutely makes sense, but the timing of doing it on May 15th, just a few weeks after having a whole draft class, that does not make any sense. Surely, if you're going to hand over the reins of the franchise to somebody brand new, you want to do it in time for them to lay out their vision and start putting in place over a first offseason, rather than forcing them to inherit one from their predecessor.
Move him out of there. Maccagnan did a terrible job as the general manager of the Jets. Absolutely terrible. They should have fired him several months ago. But to let him spend $125 million on players, including Le'Veon Bell, who the coach obviously didn't want, doesn't make any sense, didn't make any sense, and isn't getting better no matter how they try to explain it.
I think
the Becton and Bell era. So in comes Joe Douglas, who would go on to deliver a tenure befitting of his weird and wacky entry to life as a GM. Unlike most general managers, Douglas had to wait a year before he could make his mark with a signature first draft selection. After watching his new team post a 7-9 record under head coach Adam Gase over that 2019 season with Sam Darnold at quarterback, his big moment finally came on April 23rd, 2020. A loaded draft class was ready and waiting to hear their names called, and this was Joe Douglas's opportunity to stamp his authority on the team. Joe Douglas always preached the importance of the offensive line play as a staple of his tenure. That was good. The problem was he spent his first ever draft pick on Mekhi Becton, 11th overall. And as Jets fans all know, Becton was an abject nightmare for the New York Jets. And if that's not bad enough, Tristan Wirfs went just 2 picks later. You know, the guy who had turned into one of the best tackles in the NFL and earned a 5-year, $140 million contract. He has been an absolute rock for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, winning a Super Bowl with Tom Brady in year 1 and earning selections to 3 All-Pros since. Instead of picking that stud, Joe Douglas opted for a guy in Mekhi Becton who brought with him significant concerns about his weight. He was a boom or bust prospect, and he firmly lived up to the bust side of that equation, that's for sure. Initially, he showed promise with a solid enough rookie season before several significant injuries caused him to play just one single game between 2021 and 2022. Then, when he did not return in 2023, he gave up the most sacks in the entire NFL with 12, and the 5th most pressures with 50. On top of all that, 18 penalties were the 2nd most and 6 more than 3rd place. As a tone-setting draft pick for the Joe Douglas era, this was as bad as you could do. So, at least Denzel Mims worked out in the 2nd round in that draft, right? Oh, wait. It wasn't just his own mistakes that Douglas was having to worry about, though. He was also having to figure out what Mike Maccagnan had left for him to work with. One problem that he inherited was running back Le'Veon Bell, who had just averaged 3.2 yards per carry in 2019 after being signed for a massive $52.5 million contract, which included $35 million guaranteed. Now, there are several things wrong with his contract. First of all, Bell had sat out the entire 2018 season because his contract negotiations with the Steelers had stalled. Not at all concerned by Pittsburgh's willingness to let Bell sit out on the sidelines rather than extend him. Mike Maccagnan was more than happy to make him the 2nd highest paid running back in the NFL with a ton of guaranteed money. Fast forward just 1.5 years, and Joe Douglas was releasing Le'Veon Bell because of his non-existent production and because he was lurking social media post saying he should be traded. Le'Veon Bell earned $28 million from the Jets for his 18 games, meaning we can add that signing into the unmitigated disaster category. The wrong decisions weren't just limited to the front office, though. No, the 2020 Jets made plenty of mistakes on the football field as well. In particular, a Week 13 clash in which a 0-11 Jets team was actually close to winning a football game, up 28-24 with just 13 seconds left on the clock, and Las Vegas operating around the halfway line. A first victory on the season looked all but guaranteed, but then on 3rd and 10, defensive coordinator Greg Williams did something so stupid you should see my shocked face. Yup, he called a zero blitz. Jets fans remember this one. The only possible way Las Vegas could win this game was by finding a miraculous completion almost 50 yards down the field. So what did Greg Williams do? He sent the house and asked his cornerbacks to win their one-on-one matchups. One of these matchups just so happened to be Henry Ruggs, one of the fastest receivers in the entire NFL, who, would you believe it, got behind his defender and reeled in the game-winning touchdown. The play was so stupid, and that convinced half of America that these Jets were officially and blatantly tanking.
It has to be brought up, if only because it was all over Twitter immediately yesterday. Dan, the Jets are a team that it greatly benefits to lose rather than win. The word tanking was all over this yesterday. Did the Jets tank that play?
No, the Jets did not purposefully tank that play. This is ignorance over malice. I mean, this is what happens when you have an ego. This is what Greg Williams does. I've seen this time and time again with Greg Williams. He does not care the situation. It's a dumb play call, like Rex said. It just is an ego thing.
Well, the Jets heard your accusations that they were tanking, and they disapproved them immediately by firing Greg Williams the very next day. Whether they were tanking or just catastrophically bad, it's still up for debate, of course, but a 40-3 humiliation in Seattle the following week brought them to a sparkling 0-13 record. This put the 1st overall pick in play for a brief moment. But the Jets did get wins in Week 15 and Week 16 against the Rams and the Browns to make sure they avoided the stain of a winless season. This stuck them second overall in the 2021 NFL Draft. With Trevor Lawrence standing clear as the projected first overall pick, the Jets had a decision to make. And it was here that they made their next huge mistake, drafting Zach Wilson. Now, it is important to add context here. The other options, Trey Lance, Justin Fields, and Mac Jones, also turned out to be big misses. Picking any of them probably would have led to more misery as well, which is why it was a shame the Jets did not have a competent quarterback on the roster to build around. Oh, wait! Sam Darnold may have had a tough start to his New York Jets career, but boy, oh boy, are we seeing a completely different version of him now. He legitimately looks like an MVP candidate so far, and the Jets had him on the roster. With so many quarterbacks going early in 2021 and so many QB-hungry teams, the Jets missed out on a mega opportunity to transform the roster. San Francisco traded 3 first-round picks and a third-round pick to move up from 12th to 3rd in that draft, right behind the New York Jets. Can you imagine what Joe Douglas could have got for moving off that number 2 overall pick? Instead of picking Zach Wilson, he could have then moved down and still got a superstar like Penei Sewell or Jamar Chase, in addition to a ton of draft capital in the future. And if Penei Sewell or Jamar Chase were gone, guess who else was in this draft? Jalen Waddle, J.C. Horn, Patrick Surtain, Devontae Smith, Micah Parsons, Rashawn Slater. Yup, the mistake in 2021 was drafting Zach Wilson instead of recognizing the flaws in his game and attempting to rebuild around Sam Darnold. Zach Wilson famously fooled everyone with what looked like the throw of the century at his pro day. Of course, it is an outrageous throw, but also a reminder that throws made against air need to be taken with a pinch of salt. Yes, he could make those wow plays, but it was easy to do so against lesser competition in college, and there were some concerns over his accuracy, decision-making, and mechanics. Still, the Jets felt he was the guy they wanted to take second overall instead of sticking with Sam Darnold. The problem was he was clearly a player who would need development, and the New York Jets decided not to bring in a veteran quarterback to mentor him and allow him to learn on the sidelines. On top of that, the Jets' new head coach in 2021 coming in to replace the departing Adam Gase was Robert Saleh, a man known for his defensive prowess and not for developing quarterbacks. Robert Saleh then hired Mike LaFleur to be his offensive coordinator. Digging into the Shanahan tree is normally a good thing to do, but that's a significant lack of offensive coaching experience and brain power to make responsible for a QB that clearly needed a lot of fine-tuning. As you can imagine, sticking a very raw quarterback prospect into this poor New York Jets team with little to no mentorship to speak of produced disastrous results. Across his 13 starts, Zach Wilson posted a 3-10 record, producing 2,334 passing yards, 9 touchdowns to 11 interceptions, and this came from a league-low 55% completion rate, leading to a league-low passer rating of 69.7. Who could see that one coming, right? Not everything from 2021 was a disaster, though. Joe Douglas's decision to trade away safety Jamal Adams turned out to be a stroke of genius, getting back 2 first-round picks in return. These turned into Elijah Vera Tucker in 2021 and Garrett Wilson in 2022. That is a heck of a return for a safety, and it nicely transitions us into the 2022 season. Now, we all know that Joe Douglas did not exactly have the best record so far, but in 2022, he smashed it out of the park, using 3 first-round draft selections on Sauce Gardner, Garrett Wilson, and Jermaine Johnson before selecting Breece Hall in round 2. Gardner and Wilson would go on to win Rookies of the Year awards for their respective positions, finally showing some signs of life and potentially a brighter future for the New York Jets organization. Finding pillars on both sides of the ball to build around was a massive success. The Jets were not in the business of winning many awards, so to find both the offensive and defensive Rookies of the Year, in addition to what looked like a star in Breece Hall at running back, was significant. On top of that, the defense was coming together nicely under Robert Saleh, who was making good use of the young players that Joe Douglas had provided him with in the draft. They finished the 2022 season ranked as the 4th best scoring defense, improving from dead last in 2021. What could possibly ruin this momentum and cause for celebration? Unfortunately, that would be the quarterback, who was showing no signs of development. So yes, they won a few more games, but Zach Wilson wasn't exactly the reason why. Over an early season 4-game win streak, he contributed to just 1 passing touchdown and 2 interceptions before eventually going to be benched twice later in that season. One of those coincided with him refusing to take accountability for the 10-3 loss to the New England Patriots, in which his offense only managed to score 3 points. I know you guys remember that game.
As an offense, though, I mean, when you guys are only able to score 3 points, the defense only lets up 3 points. I mean, do you feel like you let the defense down at all?
No.
And as you'd expect, that one went down pretty well in the media.
Zach Wilson's trash. He's a boy playing a man's game because he mentally showed that yesterday. No accountability whatsoever.
But don't worry, things got better after that.
You want a chance to punt here or just take the snap and...
Yup, that pick has to go down as a mistake as well. Despite all the positivity brought about by the strong draft, the Jets limped their way to a 7-10 record, coming last in their division. The vibes were off, the fan base hated their quarterback, and finally a good defense was being wasted. The good news was, it was very clear that the quarterback was the problem. The bad news, though, was the finding a solution to that problem is not so easy. Cue one of the biggest moves in Jets history. The Aaron Rodgers move. In the 2023 offseason, the New York Jets made their big swing to make themselves relevant. Aaron Rodgers, a 4-time MVP, was available, and after well over a decade of misery, you bet Joe Douglas and his Jets front office were going to do whatever they possibly can to get Aaron Rodgers in the building. In total, they received Rodgers for a 15th overall pick in 2023, for the 13th overall pick and a second rounder, a 5th and a 6th, and a conditional 2024 second rounder. It was a lot of picks, but when you are suffering through the longest playoff drought in professional sports, you've got to take the swing. The move made sense on paper, but unfortunately, in the desperation to get Aaron Rodgers into the building, they rolled over and gave him way too much power. Aaron Rodgers insisted that his old buddy from Green Bay, Nathaniel Hackett, came over to be his offensive coordinator, which a controversial hire given Hackett's disastrous 2022 head coaching stint in Denver, in which the offense looked historically inept. The Jets also gladly brought in Aaron Rodgers' favorite playmakers, including Randall Cobb and Allen Lazard, with the latter giving them $44 million contracts despite never really proving anything that would suggest he was worth that. Now, it's also worth noting that Nathaniel Hackett was hired before Aaron Rodgers was even targeted, so it definitely felt like the New York Jets was targeting Aaron Rodgers right when they hired Nathaniel Hackett. Essentially, the Jets were so desperate for a winning season that they did whatever it took to make Aaron Rodgers happy. As one anonymous general manager told The Athletic, quote, "Rodgers isn't the assistant GM. Joe Douglas is the assistant GM." That was all well and good for a few months over the offseason when dreams of a Super Bowl were rampant. After all, this defense was legitimately one of the best in the NFL, and Garrett Wilson and Breece Hall were rising stars on offense. In theory, the New York Jets had everything they needed, but then, as per usual, the New York Jets, disaster. Just 4 snaps into the dramatic New York Jets debut, Aaron Rodgers tears his Achilles, and the dream was over before it had even really begun. All of a sudden, the New York Jets offense built entirely around Aaron Rodgers wasn't quite so exciting. Letting Aaron Rodgers command so much control certainly goes down as a mistake, but so does Joe Douglas's inability to fix the offensive line. Remember, Aaron Rodgers at the time was a 39-year-old quarterback with significantly reduced mobility. Therefore, banking on Mekhi Becton at right tackle, having played just 1 game in 2 years, and an underwhelming 38-year-old Dwayne Brown at left tackle is far from ideal. Obviously, Aaron Rodgers popping his Achilles is a freak incident and cannot be attributed solely to Joe Douglas's failure to fix the offensive line, but it does not change the fact that his shortcomings in this area were another significant problem for this team. Once Aaron Rodgers was out of the picture, New York Jets fans were right back to watching Zach Wilson struggle to play football. Because yes, Joe Douglas had also neglected his backup quarterback position.
I said it last week, you're not going to win with him. I mean, the dude couldn't play dead in a horror movie. I mean, how many times, how many scenes did you need to see? I mean, I've seen all of the Friday 13th. I've seen all the Nightmare on Elm Street.
Freddy Krueger.
I saw.
Can't play dead in a horror movie. That's a beautiful line.
I've seen them all. And at some point in time, You've got to come to the realization he is what he is. There is a reason if you thought he could play, if you thought he could play just a tad, there's no way you would mortgage what you mortgage and pay Aaron Rodgers what you paid him.
The Wilson-Hackett combination managed to post over 14 points in just 2 games between weeks 2 and week 11 before they finally tried a different quarterback with Tim Boyle and Trevor Siemian both giving it a go. There were plenty more boos from the MetLife Stadium crowd, and because of the Jets' front office's apparent fear of upsetting their veteran quarterback, the news cycle was constantly filled with comments from Aaron Rodgers on the Pat McAfee show.
And my mindset from the morning after the surgery, or the injury, before I even got surgery, was I'm going to try and do something that nobody's done before. So I poured my entire energy and research into this.
His Achilles tear recovery somehow turned into one of the biggest stories of the year, with Aaron Rodgers teasing a return late in the season, going out and throwing passes during warmups. Of course, it proved to be completely untrue. These background distractions only added to what can only be summarized as a chaotic 2023 campaign. Ultimately, they did manage to win 7 games for the second year running, but the vibes were off once again. Cue 2024. And a reboot of the Aaron Rodgers Super Bowl hype train. Not at all deterred by anything they had seen in 2023, the Jets doubled down and looked forward to another Aaron Rodgers and Nathaniel Hackett offense in 2024. All of the things that fans got excited about ahead of his first season still remained. But this time, there was the added help of Olu Fashanu, a first-round tackle, as well as free agent Tyron Smith, another tackle adding much-needed experience and quality to the offensive line. Also, Tyrod Taylor came in to significantly upgrade the backup quarterback spot. Now, finally, they were ready and raring to go. It was a rare Jets preseason without much drama. Oh wait, I forgot about Haason Reddick. After posting double-digit sacks over each of his previous 4 seasons in the league, Reddick looked like a sensible signing by Joe Douglas. According to a report in The Athletic, however, Joe Douglas was warned by Haason Reddick's team that if they were not going to offer him a new contract, they should hold off from trading for him. Douglas, in all of his wisdom, called their bluff. He pulled the trigger on the trade, and before you know it, he had an awkward holdout situation on his hands, with Reddick sitting out all of training camp, handing in a trade request, and ultimately missing the first 6 games of the season before eventually agreeing to a new deal. Needless to say, he was gone 1 year later. You see, even when things appear to go absolutely smoothly, there has to be a little sprinkle of Jets chaos. So once again, we have an offense purely designed with Aaron Rodgers in mind and Nathaniel Hackett doing whatever he does in the role as offensive coordinator. The bottom line was the Jets needed Aaron Rodgers to be excellent, and he was far from it. Over his first 5 games of the season, he tossed just 7 touchdowns to 4 interceptions and threw his teammates under the bus in post-game press conferences more than he delivered highlights. Still, 2-3 record after 5 weeks wasn't a disaster. The defense was playing well enough, and the Jets were just about in the hunt for the AFC East at the time. At least they were until Woody Johnson decided to fire head coach Robert Saleh. Saleh had by no means blown people away with his performance as the Jets head coach, but everyone understood he wasn't exactly given the best situation to make the most of. He had his blunders, yes, but he had at least built a dominant Jets defense over his time with the team, and his players respected him. Unfortunately, a Week 5 loss in London resulted in the end of Robert Saleh. Mike Silver of The Athletic summed up the decision by saying, "It's not just that the Jets haven't won, but they haven't stuck to plans. He seems to govern based on what he sees on social media, which way the wind's blowing, who the last person he talked to is." Again, Saleh was far from perfect, but there are plenty of reports of players coming out to defend him and talk him up both publicly and privately. Either way, just removing him from the situation without warning or consulting people didn't sit well with plenty, especially considering Saleh was escorted out of the building without getting an opportunity to say goodbye. Not only that, but the plan to elevate defensive coordinator Jeff Ulbrich has also had some problems. The defense was indeed the best aspect of the 2024 New York Jets, and Ulbrich played his part, but Woody Johnson essentially saddled him with way too much responsibility. By handing him the reins of the entire team, Ulbrich had way too much on his plate, and the defense completely fell apart as a result. They regressed to become the 20th best unit in the league, conceding 23.8 points per game. The firing of Robert Saleh wasn't the only area owner Woody Johnson got a little too involved. He also made a strong argument to his coaches after Week 4 that Aaron Rodgers should be benched in favor of Tyrod Taylor. Then a few weeks after that, he vetoed a trade for Jerry Jeudy because of his Madden rating. As you would imagine, this kind of interference from the owner reflected a complete lack of trust and an intolerable relationship. So not long after the New York Jets lost their head coach, the general manager was sent packing as well. Now, halfway through a 2024 season that was meant to save the Jets fans from decades of misery, they were at a complete loss, looking for an aging roster that was failing to win games. And with another reboot surely facing them in the offseason, even a trade for wide receiver Davante Adams couldn't salvage this situation. With the Jets going 3-7 after trading for him, if anything, all that did was annoy the homegrown superstar Garrett Wilson, who often felt like the second fiddle to Aaron Rodgers' best mate, Davante Adams, leading to him saying he would want to leave New York if Aaron Rodgers stayed in 2025. There's only one way to sum up the Aaron Rodgers experience.
I hate to say it, man. It's like Aaron Rodgers has completely sucked the air out of the building.
The 2025 reboot welcomed new faces across the board. Aaron Glenn seemed like a sensible hire as head coach, continuing the trend as defensive masterminds in the role, while also bringing over some of the good vibes from his time helping the turnaround of a struggling Detroit Lions franchise. Darren Muji also had some merits as a forward-thinking GM hire. The question marks surrounding the 2025 offseason moves came with the choice of quarterback. Justin Fields would be the man tasked with filling in for Aaron Rodgers. The good news was that Justin Fields had produced a 4-2 record in his 6 games as a starter in Pittsburgh in 2024. The bad news, though, was that his very experienced head coach Mike Tomlin still decided to bench him in favor of a well-over-the-hill Russell Wilson. Despite those 4 wins in 6 games, the bottom line was, in his 4th season in the NFL, just like his first, Justin Fields was showing no signs of being able to completely read a defense and consistently make big plays with his arm. That did not matter for the 2025 New York Jets, though, believing that they, of all teams, could figure out a way to fix this unusual quarterback prospect. They committed to him with a 2-year deal worth up to $40 million. On paper, it planned for a fearsome run attack that celebrated Justin's ability to, of course, run the football. Sounded good. But when it came down to executing that, things did not really go as planned. In fact, Glenn's Jets became the first team in NFL history to start a season 0-5 and having 0 takeaways. That is not ideal for a defensive-minded head coach, and when another loss followed in Week 6, fans were already calling for his head. You know what's crazy? Every season starts the same exact way, with new slogans, new saviors, new promises, and every season seems to end the same exact way, with pain, confusion, and press conferences filled with excuses. The names change, the faces change, but the results never does. The truth is, this team doesn't need another rebuild. It needs a reckoning. Because until someone in that building finally admits they are the problem, we're going to keep living this same nightmare on loop. But hey, that's life as a Jets fan, right? We suffer, we rant, we come back anyway. So if you made it this far, all the way to the end of this video, hit that subscribe button, because if we're going to keep reliving the same story, might as well laugh through it all together. I appreciate you guys big time, and if you like more content like this, let me know in the comments. Shout out to Sleeper, as always, for being the proud sponsor of Jets Media all season long. If you guys want to check them out, the link is at the top of the description. Use the code JETS, and you will get a 100% deposit match up to $100. Big time shout out to Sleeper, as always. If you use the code JETS, you'll get a lot of fun things, and bet responsibly, as always. Terms and conditions apply. Legal in 25 states. Big shout out to Sleeper, as always. A great way to support the channel is by supporting the sponsors. In this case, it is Sleeper. So let me know your thoughts in the comments. If you did not already, hit the thumbs up button. I'm out of here, folks, and let's go Jets. Peace.